Alright guys, so today it is finally time to show you something car related in my journey in Bulgaria. So today we are in one of the biggest city in Bulgaria, one of the three biggest cities, and I think it's the third one. It's called Varna and it's near the seaside, and we're gonna go and see a retro museum today. This is a place where we can see goods and cars from the period of the communism in Bulgaria. This was a time when not many goods were available on the market, and there was not a big diversity of things and cars and anything. So in this museum, whoever lived during that period can see things that remind them of their childhood and things like that. So the cars are what I'm interested in, so I'm going to show you mostly the cars, and I'm gonna try and tell you a little bit of a story of each one, or a little bit of more details for each car. Most of these cars were available on the market during the communism, but you had to wait like 15 years to get them. Like you had to pay down payment and then wait for 10 to 15 years to get those cars. Anyways, let's go and see it. So first of all, I want to mention that this is a private collection and all these cars have been restored to a stunning level. They're in perfect driving condition and they're being maintained regularly, oil changes and everything that needs to be done. Like this is a perfect example of how cars need to be maintained. So I had to rearrange my footage a little bit to try and keep somehow a storyline here, but anyway, so this first model that we see here, that's Lada 2101, or known as Zhiguli, or even better known as Lada 1300, because it had the 1300cc engine. It was actually a licensed copy of the Fiat Model 124, and it was produced in the Soviet Union under the brand of Vaz. It was made for entire 18 years, from 1970 to 1988, without any changes. Like the model from 1970 is exactly the same as the ones that were produced in 1988. They were also made in a station wagon version, which was known as 2102, and this 2102 was offered with three different engines. I think one was 1300, one was 1500, and one was somewhere in between. Then parallel with the 2101, they started producing also 2103 a little bit later in 1972, and they stopped earlier actually in 1984. So 2103 was an upgraded version of the 2101. Again, it was developed together with Fiat. This time the Fiat version was Fiat 124 Special. We're gonna see those later. And the Lada 2103 had a 1500 engine and had a little bit of a facelift and a little bit of improved interior, but it still shared a lot of parts with the other model, the 2101. I actually had one of these and I was really happy with it. They were very, very reliable cars for their time. But again, they were produced from 1972 to 1984 without any changes. And then here we have the next generation, the 2104 and 2105, which are basically the same car with the same 1300 engine as the previous model. One is station wagon, of course, one is the base saloon, and then we have the deluxe saloon, which is the 2107 with the 1500 engine from Lada 1500. So again, a little bit of facelift from the previous two models, but pretty much the same car. This one, believe it or not, was produced from 1980 to 2012 without any changes. I also owned one of these, the 2107, the deluxe model, and it was a really great car. I was very happy with it, never had issues with it. And here we have the Lada 2108, which in Bulgaria we knew as Lada Samara, but it was also known as Lada Sputnik and many other names. Surprisingly, again, it was produced from 1984 to 2013 with no changes, of course. And last but not least, the 4x4 Lada Niva, or Vaz 2121, which was produced from 1977 till, drumroll please, till present. Before we go to the next section, which is another Soviet Union brand, I want to give you a little bit of history. So in 1940 and 1941, in the Soviet Union, 500 cars were produced with the name Kim 1050, which was inspired by the word prefect, and then the World War II started and the production stopped and it never resumed after the war. Actually, the development of a second model of the Kim started in 1944, but the car never saw light of day because Comrade Joseph Stalin personally decided to change the plans, and since he acquired the plans and the tooling for the 1939 Opel Kadett as part of the war reparations from Germany, he decided that the production was going to continue with this model. And this is how in 1947 the production of Moskvich 400 started, and it continued production from 47 to 1956. And in 1954, parallel to Moskvich 400, a 401 started production too, but they both were produced only until 1956. Unfortunately, we don't have examples of these cars in the museum, that's why I showed you pictures, which I legally downloaded from Wikipedia. And now back to the museum. Here we can see a few examples of the next model, next generation, which is Moskvich 402, Moskvich 403 and Moskvich 407. So these are all with the same body, but Moskvich 403 was produced from 1956 to 1960 with 1.1 liter engine and 3-speed manual transmission, and then from 1960 to 1965 Moskvich 403 and Moskvich 407 were produced with this body, but it had a new 1.3 liter engine, and 403 kept the 3-speed manual transmission, but the 407 received a 4-speed manual transmission. This, I believe, was the first model of Moskvich that was imported to Bulgaria, and I remember these cars very well from my childhood, even though I was born in 1974. This is the next model, Moskvich 408, and this one was with a 1.3 liter engine, and it was produced from 1964 to 1976 in the main factory near Moscow, but also for a short period of time from 1966 to 1967 it was produced in Ijevsk, again in USSR, and it was known as Moskvich Ij. Over the years it received some upgrades, so it had different face masks and different interiors, and in the late years it received a new 1500cc engine and it was renamed to a Moskvich 412. It was also made as a sedan, as a station wagon, and also even as a panel van, which we don't have here. So like I said in the beginning, this is not only a car museum, it is also a museum of the communism in general, which lasted in Bulgaria from 1944 to 1989. So in the background you can see the Soviet Union communist leaders, the Bulgarian communist leader Todor Zhivkov, and also some goods and some stuff that we had during that time. It's a very interesting museum. The next model of Moskvich came out in 1976. It was called Moskvich 2140. It featured modified body and a new 1360cc engine, and later even a 1500cc engine, and the production continued till 1988. And the latest model, Moskvich Aleko, was produced from 1986 to 2003, and it had the all new body. The engine though was still the same, the 1500. Another USSR vehicle was 469. It is largely used from many East European countries as an off-road military light utility vehicle. It is 4x4, it has a 2.5 liters engine, and it is produced from 1971 again till present. And this is its predecessor, Gas 69, or known also as WAZ 69, and it was produced from 1953 to 1972 with pretty much the same engine. And these are few motorcycles made in Bulgaria actually. The first one, Balkan 50, was made under the license of the German company DKW, and there were a few more models that were made until the early 60s, I believe. I personally owned a Balkan 50 and it was a lot of fun. The same factory also made bicycles, and there was no kid in Bulgaria that didn't have one of the only few models that were made for years and years and years. And here you can see also many iconic toys from that time that were largely sold over Bulgaria. All kids had the same toys. There was no variety at all. Another Soviet Union post-war brand, Gaz, started producing in 1946 till 1958 the Gaz M20 Pobieda, which was also licensed to Poland, and it was produced in Poland as FCO Warszawa, which is the Polish pronunciation of Warsaw. What we see here is the Polish version, the Warszawa. It had a 2.1-liter four-cylinder engine, which was chosen during the development process personally by Stalin over an inline 6 2.7-liter engine. The next generation, Gaz-21, known as Volga, was produced from 1956 to 1970, and in the beginning it started with 2.5-liter engine. It had a 3-speed manual transmission, but also optional automatic, which was new for the Soviet Union. And over the years it received 2 facelifts, and with the second facelift I believe it received a 5.5-liter engine. Gaz-24, the new generation of Volga, had the all-new body, and it was made in 4-door sedan version and also station wagon version. It was made from 1970 to 1985, and it was largely used as an executive car from the government, and it featured a 2.5-liter engine with 4-speed manual transmission and floor-mounted shifter for the first time. It was quite expensive car. It wasn't really affordable for most of the people. Very few of them were private in Bulgaria. Most of them were used by the government as limousines, or also the station wagons were used as ambulances and taxis. They were very, very expensive to be afforded by normal people. The next generation of Volga, Gaz 3102, was produced from 1982 all the way to 2010. It featured multiple engines starting from 2.3 liters, 2.5 and even V8 5.5-liter engine. And this is the high-end line of the same factory, which was producing Volga Gaz. This is Gaz 13, known as Chaika, and it was produced from 1959 to 1981 with original 7 seats and 5.5-liter V8 engine. For the entire production, only 3,179 cars were made, and they were exclusively made for the governments of the communist countries. So not everyone was able to buy one of these. The most affordable car for the people at that time was the Zaporozhets, and here we can see the entire line of it. The first model, ZAZ 965, was produced from 1960 to 1963 with 750cc rear-mounted engine, air-cooled of course, which in the next generation from 1962 was replaced by a 900cc engine. The model name was ZAZ 965A, and both these cars featured large suicide doors, and the production ended in 1969. The next generation of Zaporozhets was produced in 3 different models from 1966 to 1994. The first one was ZAZ 966, which we don't have here. The second one was 968, the yellow one here, and then the one next to it is 968M. There were a little bit of improvement in the body between those 3 models, but they all had rear-mounted air-cooled 1.2-liter engine with 4-speed manual transmission. My mom used to have one of these, the exact same color and model as the yellow one here, and that's actually the car that I learned how to drive on. That was when I was 10, believe it or not. And that concludes all the cars from the Soviet Union that were popular in Bulgaria during the communism. And also there was this brand of motorcycles, Izh, which I think had 5 generations, and it was produced in Izhevsk, where they were producing also some of the Moskvich cars. But of course, we didn't only have cars from the Soviet Union, we also had other cars, but again from the East European bloc, mostly communist countries or at least socialist republics. Like Romania, for example, here you can see the famous Dacia, which was largely produced at that time, and it still exists, and now I think it's owned by Renault, and they still produce beautiful car. But this is an example from the communists. And now we are in Czechoslovakia with this beautiful example of Škoda Octavia that was produced from 1959 to 1971. Real beauty, isn't it? Then another two models, 1000 and 1100, 1 liter and 1.1 liter engines. Both of these were produced in parallel from 1964 to 1969. And then the yellow one here is the beginning of the 100 series that were produced from 69 to 77. Almost 1.1 million of these were produced over the 8 years of production. And this is only one example of the many motorcycles produced in Czechoslovakia under the brand of Java, and I think this one is from the early 50s. Between 1976 and 1990, two other models of Škoda were in production, and these are the 105 with 1050cc engine and Škoda 120, which was with 1.2 liter engine. And here we can see a Škoda Rapid, which was the fastback version of the Škoda 120. And the bike, I believe, is a Java 897 from the early 70s. We mentioned earlier the Fiat 124 that was produced in Poland, while in the Soviet Union they were producing the licensed copy called VAZ 2103. The two cars were very similar and were sharing most of the parts. So this is the Fiat 126, which in 1972 came out as a replacement of the famous Fiat 500 or Fiat 500. The majority of it was produced in Poland actually, and the production there continued all the way to 2000. It had a 600cc engine which was replaced by a 650cc engine at some point, and it was a very popular car in Bulgaria during the communism. Another model of Fiat, the Fiat 128, which was subcontracted or licensed to a foreign country, this time to Yugoslavia, and it was produced as Zastava Scala, or known also as Jugoscala. It was produced from 1972 all the way to 2008, and in 1980, parallel to this model, they started producing a little bit higher end as a version of this car, which was called Zastava Coral. And now we are in East Germany, the Great Berlin Wall, right? So this was East Germany car called Warburg 311. It's an incredibly beautiful car. It was produced from 1956 to 1965 in multiple variations, and some of them were pickup, sedan, limousine, coupe, and even a two-seat roadster. And just like all other cars produced in East Germany, it had a two-stroke engine. The next generation Warburg 353 had an all-new body, and it was also produced in multiple variations, including a four-door sedan and a station wagon. And it also had a 1-liter two-stroke engine that had only 3 cylinders and, believe it or not, only 7 moving parts. These were the 3 pistons, the 3 connecting rods, and the crankshaft. And here you can see some other goods that were produced in the East Germany at the time and largely distributed over the socialist countries in Europe. And this is the iconic Trabant. This is the symbol of East Germany. It was produced for over 30 years and more than 3 million of them were made. This is again two-stroke car, started production in the late 50s and continued all the way till 90, I think. What's funny about this car is that it had a steel unibody, but all the panels like the hood, the trunk, the fenders, the doors, and even the roof were made out of Duroplast, which was actually a hard plastic made of recycled cotton waste mixed with resins from the East Germany dye industry. The engine initially was 500cc and later it was replaced by a 600cc, but still two-stroke and air-cooled engine. And what's interesting about the transmission also is that it had a transmission similar to the rear hub of a bicycle, which was allowing the engine to idle while the car was just cruising but still in gear. And this is the early model from the 50s. And some more motorcycles here from the company MZ. This was actually the company DKW, which was founded in Germany in the beginning of 20th century, but after the World War II it remained in East Germany and received the name of MZ. And this one is the MZ ETZ 250, which was largely used as a police motorcycle in Bulgaria for many years. And again, more toys and motorcycles and goods that were really popular in Bulgaria in that time. The motorcycles are Russian Ij, the Czechoslovakian Java, the East German MZ, etc. This light truck was also made in Poland under the name of Żuk, and it features the chassis, the suspension and the engine from Warsaw, which I showed you earlier. And this is a big collection of toys again that were popular between all the kids of my age and before me. And like I said, we didn't have a lot of variety, so here you can see the same toy in different colors, like many examples. Also some electronics, so-called electronics, TVs and radios and cassette players and stuff. Most of them were made in Bulgaria and USSR, of course. And at the exit, our communist leader Tor Zhivkov is waving at us saying, hey, communism was good. Alright guys, so that was it. The whole museum, we showed you everything. Hopefully you liked it and now you know a little bit more about the Russian cars and the cars from the communist countries. That's what I grew up with. So most of them are really cool now, but at the time they were like, Anyways, I love them now. So thanks for watching guys. See you later. Bye.